First of all, I'd like to thank all the different speakers that have spoke, regardless of whether it was giving us stick or supporting us. I thank you first of all for coming in. I think on this debate, I think a few things needs to be addressed. Let's be honest to the people out there. A regulation has no flexibility. I think we have to be honest. A regulation, no flexibility. Second of all, I heard reference of different biodiversity laws. I've looked into the hedgerow part of it, and when someone says something nowadays, the test that was done was 10 square kilometres in Monaghan, and that was just said, well, the rest of the country is that way. Could be completely wrong. Down my way, there's more hedges than ever there was. So I think we need to be very careful of what we say. Thirdly, a lot of deputies refer to water quality. Have a look at the map that came out last week, where the water quality was supposed to be not so good. Was there bog in it? Was there peaty land in it? Have a look where the peaty land was and have a look at the quality of water in that area. So you might educate yourselves on that. Minister, one question I have for you is what part, you spoke, and I welcome what you said, you spoke about the original document was basically a step too far, that the Council of Ministers got together and that it's a more realistic document that you're working on. And in that more realistic document over the last month, I've heard MEPs, TDs, ministers, everyone saying, don't worry guys, this is voluntary. That's the only ask that we have in order. It's the only ask. To legislate that on private landowners, that to be voluntary. You're saying it already, but then I listened to your speech. And you talked about Portnamone and you talked about Quilsha. Sort of that to be mostly them, but there's an if in it. And that's the if that we're afraid of. That's the if that the farmers around rural Ireland are afraid of. When I spoke earlier, I says, no problem, you can bring in a scheme. Nobody's going to stop you. But the if part of will it be voluntary or not? And if it's going to be voluntary, why isn't it put in on legislation or written down or not oppose our motion by saying, guys, you're right, and we will put that in to make sure that we take that fear piece out of it. And that's the only ask that has been in this motion. I've heard people talking about this the second time this week. Last week, it was a motion about the culling of the herd. It was nothing got to do with the Nature Restoration Law. The Nature Restoration Law is going to be voted on next week, and in Brussels. And if you look at other countries, the likes of Holland, the likes of Germany, the pushback that's been from it. You know the amount of work that has been done around this country in re-wetting, what ordinary people worked with the different bodies. You've recognised that. We don't go, it's not that we're against all this, but the one thing I want you to be clear on is that there's a fear out there on the agricultural drain peatland and on the hills. Them are the two pieces. And you can put this to bed fairly quick by saying, okay, we'll push it in legislation. You're already saying it that it's voluntary. So all we have to do is push it to bed the way that the confusion goes out of it, the way that the mixed messaging goes out of it, and the way that people know that they'll have a future in their communities, where at the moment there is a fear out there. I know areas, and it's not far from me at home, that people reclaim their land, and that's all they have. 100% of their farm is drained peatland, that the EU actually gave them grants to shore, put in a pipe, years ago in the 80s. People came in with a digger and done it. Some of them done it with a spade and a shovel. And they reared their families on it. And those people are contributing to those communities as good as someone that's in the Golden Vale in their own way. They mightn't be their full income, they might have to work from outside of it, but they are doing the best they can. And you know what? Their youngsters might be on the ladies or the men's football team or soccer team or rugby team. Their husbands or wives might be going down to the shop or to the hardware buying stuff to keep someone else's youngster in a job. And that's the fear that's out there. And I think, Minister, you have the ball in your hand. You have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to go and say, we will put it into legislation to keep the fear factor out of it, that any of this, we're going to be doing it on state land, and you know what? State land will make up a lot of it, but I worry about what Burnamona has said. And when the state land is being done, they need to take a leaf out of the National Parks book and talk to people, because they haven't done that, and there has been problems in parts of Offaly and other parts of the country. That Burnamona need to do that. But it's the one thing that needs to be done to quell the fear. But I don't think anyone can actually stand up here. While the Council of Ministers have a proposal, there is the Commission proposal, which is, in my opinion, drastically worse. And I don't think anyone knows how the votes will go. I don't know how the MPs will go. And, you know, I've heard criticism of different groups out there. Well, if the Committee on Environment was split down the middle, obviously it's a pretty contentious issue. And Minister, I thank you for listening. I would ask you to actually withdraw your amendment and say, I agree with what you're proposing. Deputy Ledden talked earlier on. We actually said that the ministers, the Council of Ministers, if you read our document, proposal, all it needs is tweaking, that no private lands would be included. Happy days then. And that when they do the public lands, that they'll actually make sure that the farmers around it are not re-wetted. And in fair, and the National Park's done that when they done that work. They made sure that. Burnamona don't appear to be doing it, and no one seems to be giving them the kick in the ass that they need to not be doing that. And all I'm asking you is you should withdraw the amendment you have put in, agree with what we have said, and we try and make sure to put in, to legislate for what we have asked for. Thank you.
Thank you.